Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer at beautiful Santa Anita, getting prepared for Breeders' Cup 2023. And race number 5 is the filly and mare sprint. We're going 7/8 of a mile for $1 million, kicking off a pick 4, kicking off an old dirt pick 4. Before we take a look at the entry card, I got to remind you again, because it's such a great deal. You got those Breeders' Cup player packages available, 3 of them to be exact. Shop.drf.com is where to go to get all the details, all your favorite handicapping products at low prices from DRF. Here's the field for the filly and mare sprint. Good Night Olive looking to make it 2 in a row. Does the rail draw bother you?
No, I don't think it should bother anybody here. She's a very handy horse, and all she's got to do is get out of the gate. I think she could fall in to the right trip in this race, because the speed horses that she's going to have to deal with in here, such as they are, they're breaking from the outside. They'll probably clear her, but she should be able to get up behind them or out or to the outside.
Curious as to your thoughts on this Timeform US pace projector. I know Edith's fast. And I know blinkers are going on for Bob Baffert, and I know Bob Baffert likes to be in front.
Yeah.
But Society, to me, seems wicked fast.
I agree with you. I just think Society's a really fast horse, and I'd be shocked if Steve Asmussen didn't want her on the lead in this race. I think she makes the front, and if Ida wants to get up there, she's going to have to chase.
And if they go hot and heavy up front, it sets things up for Good Night Olive. Here's her most recent start. She's going to get beat by the now retired Echo Zulu in running second in the Ballerina. She also runs a career best 108 by her speed figure. And I'm not going to be too worried about the 2.5-month layoff after the Ballerina. This is the exact same Ballerina to Breeders' Cup move that Chad used so effectively last year.
Exactly. It worked perfectly last year. She capped off that 4-for-4 campaign as a 4-year-old with the Breeders' Cup filly mare sprint win. She'll try to back up that title here, Dan. She looks like a clear horse to beat to me. There is a dangerous speed to her outside that she's going to have to deal with, but her overall form, it's amazing. There are no bad races on her card. She lost the last time when Echo Zulu ran a hole in the wind, and one other loss this year where she just got a brutal trip and was best.
Here's the filly with perhaps all the upside in the race, the 2. Clearly Unhinged. She is a 3-year-old filly. She's never been off the board sprinting in her career. Her most recent start was the Chillingworth. I thought she did a lot of work in that race, opened up the lead, and a good setup closer was able to run her down. Is she good enough to beat this field? The jury's still out, but I think she's tactical enough to tuck in behind the leaders maybe this time.
I'm going to agree with you. I don't think she needs to be on the lead in this kind of a race, especially if they go fast. So that's not going to work against her. At first, I was disappointed that she didn't win last time. But I think you're right. She did a lot of work there. First of all, she didn't break great. Then they had to rush her up the rail. She wound up contesting that pace all the way around the turn and briefly got clear. But there was a pretty good closer coming after her.
The number 3 is Ida. And all Ida did going into the Chillingworth was win 8 races in a row, spanning almost 2 years. Baffert put her in one good spot after another, and it looked like he found another good spot in the Chillingworth, and for one reason or another, she just didn't fire that day.
Yeah, we talked about that race a little bit when we were, talking about Clearly Unhinged. That pace was competitive, and she was a part of that, but so was Clearly Unhinged, who wound up lasting for second in there. For whatever reason, Ida just didn't fire her best shot there. I'm not even sure if her best shot is good enough against this field.
Baffert is going to put blinkers on, and he has had a lot of success with equipment changes and major races over the years. If Society doesn't go and they hand Ida the lead, we've seen stranger things in the Breeders' Cup. Mare wouldn't be strange at all. This is a multiple Grade 1 stakes winner trained by Brad Cox. She defeated Good Night Olive when that one had a tough trip in the Derby City Distaff, would you say?
Absolutely.
Then in the Chicago Handicap, 2 starts back, Society beat her handily, but it also maybe was a speed-favoring track at Ellis Park. Last time out, I'm curious as to your thoughts on the ride. Flavina looked like wanted to get close. The pace wasn't very fast. She was down inside, took back a little bit, and then when they sprinted for home, she couldn't kick. I don't think she liked the wet track.
That's fair enough, and I wouldn't argue too hard with that. I also feel like she was just in over her head against Echo Zulu and Good Night Olive last time. We'll see how it all plays out. She does have that Grade 1 win earlier this year at Churchill Downs. She did beat Good Night Olive that day, but all you have to do is go back and pull the replay, Dan. Good Night Olive had no chance in that race, getting totally boxed in through the stretch, and she couldn't run.
Speaking of pulling the replay, here's Kiren Bosch's win in the Chillingworth over Clearly Unhinged, over Ida. There was the hot pace. Kiren Bosch is a late running sprinter. She runs by them all at the end. I talked to assistant trainer Juan Leyva, who said, really the break is the key for this horse because she had been a notoriously bad starter, especially in that Rancho Bernardo 2 starts back, where it arguably cost her the race. John Sadler and the team have done a lot of work in the gate with her. They're they're comfortable, that maybe she can get out of there and at least stay with the field.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, she had a good setup last time. The pace was there for her, but she also really ran. She took it over relatively easily and got away from that field at the end. This is going to be a tougher task for her. This is a much better field than that one. But all you got to do is pull apart her PPs down. They've tried a lot of different things with her, longer distances. They tried turf a couple of times. 6 times they've sprinted her on dirt in her career. She's making up ground through the stretch every single time. If they go fast in front of her, she will be there at the end.
From Japan comes the number 6, Make Kaiel, and she's going to be an outsider in this race. Remember that her first preference was the turf sprint. She didn't draw into that race, so here she is trying dirt for the first time in her career, and for the most part, this is a turf pedigree. Her second dam was a multiple stakes winning router on dirt in Japan. For the most part, it's turf, and her form's sort of questionable coming in anyway.
Yeah, it's hard to make any kind of convincing case for her here, Dan. She's obviously going to be a pretty big price in this race. Listen, it's not the strongest filly mare turf sprint we've ever seen. It would be a wild upset if she won.
Society's gate-to-wire win in last year's Cotillion, going 2 turns, propelled Steve Asmussen to run her in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, where she was part of a wickedly hot pace and understandably tiring. I think in the back of Steve's mind, though, he always thought maybe she was a 7/8 sprint type, and he's been proven right in her last 2 races, including this race, the pink ribbon around 2 turns at Charlestown. She's won her last 2 starts by a combined 16.25 lengths with fast by her speed figures.
Yeah.
I talked to Steve earlier this week. He says she can go as fast as a horse can go, and he loves this post position.
Yeah, she drew perfectly on the outside. She is, to me, she is going to be on the lead in here, whether Ida wants to be part of this pace or not. She's really fast, and her speed figures overall, they match up very well with what Goodnight Olive has done throughout her career. She's a super dangerous horse.
3 Witches, the number 8, is 30-1 on the morning line with Luis Saez aboard, and this one made her graded stakes debut a profitable one in the Princess Rooney, most recently at Gulfstream Park. She rallied from off a hot pace. She won that race. It seems like she's come back off this little bit of a layoff, a much more mature horse. Now she's got to take a big step up.
She's going to have to run better again. We'll see if she can take one more step forward. You were on her, Dan. She ran really well off the layoff. You liked her last time. You got paid at over 10-1 in that spot, and she ran a really nice race that day. I also think it's pretty notable. She did it without LASIK, so you don't have to worry about that. She'll be able to handle this kind of a race with no LASIK. She just has to get faster.
Yugiri has won 3 of her last 4, and this one was very gutsy to score last time out at Keeneland, going 7/8 of a mile. She was really involved in a race-long duel. Now, the pace wasn't very fast, but that's a pretty nice mare, Wicked Halo, that poked ahead in front of her at these 3/16 pole. Yugiri said no. She came right back, determined to win that race. Her trainer told our Nicole Russo that last workout was the best he's ever seen her work.
I mean, I like this filly a lot. I think she has a lot of ability. They've sprinted her on turf. Sprinted her on dirt 7 times in her career. 6 wins, 6 for 7, sprinting on dirt in her career. The little sticking point there, the 1 loss, Goodnight Olive buried her last year.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. I kind of wanted to take a shot against Goodnight Olive at a short price, but I didn't. I just think that she's going to get the right setup and the right trip. I think Society is very, very dangerous in here, though.
I do too, and I don't think there's that much between those 2 horses, but like you, I sided with Goodnight Olive. This is her distance. Doesn't matter what the pace is. If they go a little slower, she's fine. If they go faster, it obviously helps her even more. I put Kiren Bosch second. I think she's going to rally up at the end.
She should be flying in the stretch. It's all about whether she gets just enough pace and just enough time. But we'll see if Goodnight Olive can make it 2 Breeders' Cup victories in a row in the Filly and Mare Sprint.